Hello, everyone, and welcome to this year's World Aquatic Animal Day, where we are addressing the impact of our human activities on aquatic animals. World Aquatic Animal Day is a project of the Aquatic Animal Law Initiative and the Animal Law Clinic at the Center for Animal Law Studies at Lewis and Clark Law School. My name is Kathy Hessler. I'm a clinical law professor and director of the Animal Law Clinic and the Aquatic Animal Law Initiative. My pronouns are she, her. It is my great pleasure to bring you this session, Protecting Aquatic Animals, Their Habitats and Treaty Rights, a Nez Perce Perspective, with Julian Matthews, who's a board member of Nimiipuu Protecting the Environment. I had the honor to record this discussion with Julian as a leader from Nimiipuu Protecting the Environment, whose mission is to carry on time-honored sustainable environmental practices in the tradition of the Nimiipuu by facilitating and organizing tribal youth and adults in activities for the protection, enhancement, and promotion of Mother Earth and the Nimiipuu culture. Julian Matthews is an enrolled Nez Perce member and has been actively involved in environmental issues for the last 20 years, primarily in response to threats made on or near the usual and accustomed areas protected by the Treaty of 1855. These areas are guaranteed to the Nimiipuu with the signing of the 1855 treaty, and in many instances, the federal, state, or local governments or private interests interpret those rights quite differently than do the Nez Perce people. Julian is committed to ensuring that treaty rights are kept and protected for those who come after us, as well as for the people of today. He works to ensure that tribal youth and adults are educated about the issues affecting tribal people, and also to make sure that the Nimiipuu take an active role in protecting their treaty rights. Before we begin, there are just a few administrative matters. This session has been recorded and will play during this hour, but we will not have a questions and answers session at the end. The session will end by 10:50 Pacific time, which gives us time for a short break before the next session begins at 11. Before Julian begins, we know that some background on the issues he will discuss might be helpful. So Julian and others from Nimiipuu Protecting the Environment have been working to protect the waters covered by their Treaty of 1855. There have been significant challenges to the health of these rivers, like other water systems, from pollution and overuse, including impacts from mining, timber, commercial fishing, overheated waters, plastics, and more. One of the significant factors impacting the health of these waterways has also been the dams that were put up along many sections of the river systems in Idaho, Washington, and Oregon. These dams are deemed beneficial because they are part of the hydroelectric system providing power. They make barge transport on the river easier, and they create recreational areas for tourism. However, these dams make it much more difficult for endangered salmon to complete their 900-mile journey upriver from the ocean to their spawning grounds. As a result, the salmon and many of the animals who rely on them are doing very poorly, and some are facing extinction. There is a proposal from Idaho Congressman Mike Simpson with positive elements, which would breach 4 dams on the lower Snake River. It would also fund restoration of the river corridors, and it would make Columbia Basin tribes and states co-equal primary Northwest fish managers. These are positive suggestions that are moving forward. The proposal also has some problematic elements that some people are fighting, including protection for the remaining dams for at least 35 years and up to 50 years, and a moratorium on litigation relating to all 14 dams on the Columbia River, the 12 federal projects, including dams on the upper Snake River, and all FERC licensed dams on the Columbia Basin. Conversation about how best to proceed is ongoing. Meanwhile, Julian and others have been working to address the problems that the rivers and the animals face. They've been trying to help people understand the interconnected nature of the entire environment, that commercial and industrial uses like mining and timber actually affect the waterways in significant ways, that other animals rely on salmon for their food and are suffering from low numbers of salmon in the rivers, and that this is made worse by commercial and sport fishers also taking salmon. That animals who rely on salmon include orcas, sea lions, birds, bears, elk, and others. that sea lions are being killed just for eating salmon so that there can be enough salmon left for commercial and sports fishers and others. That not protecting the environment creates conflict between animals and conflict between people and animals. Protecting the waters can also protect the animals and the treaty rights of many tribal people. Now let's hear from Julian about his work and his thoughts on these issues. Julian, can you tell us about yourself and the work of Nimiipuu Protecting the Environment?
She was saying, my name is Julian Matthews. I'm enrolled in Nez Perce, and or Nimiipuu is what we call ourselves. One of the names we call it. Nimiipuu means the people, and that was the Nez Perce was kind of a misnomer. When the French traders came through, they thought we were pierced our noses, but I think the Chinook may have, but I've never seen or heard of any of my relatives piercing their nose. So, but that's what's written in the treaty with it's called the treaty with the Nez Perce. So that's how we got the name Nez Perce. And anyway, so I grew up in Coeur d'Alene and lived in a big timber industry. Potlatch was real big at the time when I was growing up in high school. The mines were going full throttle. The Silver Valley, they called it, where they had a bunch of mines for zinc, lead, silver, gold. And we grew up swimming in Coeur d'Alene Lake in the summer. And so what eventually I started realizing that after I went in the Navy and when traveled around quite a bit and came back, I realized that there were a lot of things that were detrimental to the water. Even just, take something simple like people swimming in the Coeur d'Alene Lake. There's a lot of effluent from the mines. The smelters would produce all this lead dust, and all kinds of pollution went into the river and eventually went down to the lake, into Lake Coeur d'Alene. And when you're swimming there, you don't really think about it when you're younger. But then after I got older, I realized that a lot of these issues are affecting not just Coeur d'Alene Lake, but the Coeur d'Alene River, the Spokane River, and just the whole system was being impacted by what some corporations, mining and timber industry, were doing higher up in higher levels, and it was coming down, and we were feeling the effects of it. And so I went to school after I got out of the Navy, went to Gonzaga, graduated, moved to Portland, and then worked there for a while, then moved back got a job with my tribe in Lapwai, Idaho. It's near Lewiston and Clarkston, pretty close to the Snake River. And so I started working there. And at the time, I wasn't really too much into environmental stuff. That's been quite a while ago. But then later on, we started, Elliot and some other people, we started looking at issues that we felt needed to be addressed, because the members of our group are pretty political, and we think about the rights we have as treaty tribal members. FYI, a lot of tribes don't have treaties. Coeur d'Alene tribe up north doesn't have a treaty. I don't know how many other tribes in Idaho, Washington have treaties, but some have them and some don't. And so a treaty is really a strong agreement that the federal government, the US government, president on it, the Congress on and down has with us, the Nez Perce tribe, to which we gave up certain things, or we ceded land to the government, and we retained certain rights, hunting, fishing, and gathering rights. And those are not, they were never commercial. We never, later on when the non-Indians came, and Indians learned about commercial fishing. Prior to that, there was no commercial fishing, in my opinion, and as far as I know, maybe limited, but we mainly took, hunted, fished, and gathered for our subsistence and for our ceremonies. And for instance, with the salmon, it's a big issue right now. We can't fish. Very seldom can we fish. We have limited salmon supplies, and so we can't use those in our ceremonies. And one thing I've seen, we were talking about this earlier, about the differences between the tribes and non-Indian, even environmental groups. Like we're not, like when I fish, I don't fish to simply sell it, or it's for subsistence, and it's because it's a tradition that my grandfather fished that river, Clearwater, Columbia, and the Snake. And so it's something that we're, as a part of our culture, we're continuing, and we respect the salmon. The salmon is just as equal in life value, I guess you could say, at us. And to me, the way I view it and the way other tribal members, the ones I, hang out with, is that we're part of this world. We're part of this system, I guess. We're not the lords of it, and we don't control it and determine, this fish is valuable, this water is valuable, this forest is valuable. How much can we make off of it? Because that's what I've noticed between the tribal perspective and the non-Indian perspective. It seems like they commodify most living things. They commodify it. How much is this worth? How much are those salmon worth? Like right now in Idaho, they make a lot of money off of guides, tags, licenses, fishing, hunting, whatever it is, licenses. So everyone's and the water, the water is really critical too, because they want to keep a lot of it in the dams and the reservoirs for the irrigation. And the salmon right now, the salmon are probably the last on this whole chain of what is valued. And to me, that to us is the first one, like I tell people with the trying to make this big settlement with the dam breaching, dam breaching of the four lower snake is one of the big issues with us. And so to me, I do like Simpson's idea. There are a lot of aspects that I don't agree with and a lot of people don't agree with, but the main thing is that my treaty right supersedes any right on that river. And, it's like I tell people, we deal with a lot of non-Indian environmental groups, and they want to assuage everyone, make sure everyone's happy, the irrigators are happy, the hydroelectric power people are happy, which I'm in favor of alternative energy sources and not hydropower. But to me, like what I'm concerned about is allowing these salmon that were here long before we were, a lot of the non-Indians were here that came out this way, to be able to live and flourish like they once did. And with the current, particularly up this way, because the Chinook come up here to spawn. I don't think they go up north up on the other end of the Columbia, but so they come up this way to spawn, have spawnings having their babies. They have their babies up here, up in the headwaters where they were before we put in the dams, not we, but they put in the dams. It is we put them in because we're part of this society and this culture. And so anyway, before they put them in, these fish could spawn up there, lay their eggs, and then they would float back down to the ocean. And that's people, I thought at first they just swam, like the smoke swam back to the ocean, but they have to float. And so what's killing them on the way down is the reservoirs that are really hot. And then even outside our door here, the potlatch Clearwater paper that makes all kinds of toilet paper, paper towels, and all this kind of stuff, which everyone wants, so they're dumping the warm water into the river and it kills the smolts. Just when they go this way, that's not very far. That's not even entering the snake, it's on the Clearwater. And then they go further down, they have the big pools. And to me, if you've never seen a reservoir behind any of these dams, in the summer, it gets 100 degrees down here in Lewiston or more. And this reservoir, Lower Granite Reservoir, is just like it's like this really gross kind of cauldron of water. And you see, it's just really gross to me. And then those fish are supposed to float down to the ocean. And so they get stuck in the reservoir and they either die from the heat or they get chomped up by now there's a lot of different type of fish that know where they're at, I guess you could say. And then if they make it through the dam, then they have to contend with other things, other animals that it's like they've adjusted to where they know where the fish ladder is, for instance, on the other side, and they know that, so they wait there, whatever it is, fish. I think they used to call them northern pike minnows. And then there's other birds that wait there because they know that's where they're coming. And so they wait there and feed on them. And so those types of things are kind of affecting it too. And then I know people will say, well, how come you want to get rid of these four lower ones or snake river ones? And there's a lot of dams on the river on the Columbia, which is true. But the main thing, like I was saying, is those Chinook come up this way. This is where they traditionally have spawned. And they returned, for years, who knows how many years. They have them traced back a long time. And so right now with the dams, like I was saying, that's one of our major issues, is getting those dams removed. And we have support now. And with our treaty right, like I was saying earlier, that's an agreement, because I know a lot of times like I said, I think it was made my statement about me, is that people think the treaties are over. Oh, that was 150, 200 years ago. That's like, who cares? This doesn't exist, but it still does exist. And, you know, it's interesting to hear currently about a lot of these issues, like with different racial issues, you know, and the Indians have been subjugated and our treaty rights have been subjugated for, you know, for a long time, hundreds of years. And so we've always been kind of at this, I've noticed personally, like in our group, that Indians have been kind of like where, oh, we can't really do nothing. They kind of lost their self-esteem as a people to do something about it. You know, like we've been, and we're trying to do something about it. We're going to do something about it. And we are doing something about it. And so it's kind of like, to me, with this issue, because it's not only the salmon that we have a treaty right to take as per our agreement with the federal government, who isn't upholding their end, and the water, the protecting of the water. And we want to see a free flowing river up this way, particularly because that's more natural and that's what we want. We want to have that set up. And so, like we were saying also earlier about the future, like we work with kids every Wednesday. We have 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders come to the, we call it the Nimiipuu canoe site, where we dug our first dugout canoe. We have them come. We talk to them about things. We talk to them about treaty rights. The majority are Nez Perce and rural Nez Perce, so they'll have these rights that I have today, you know, 40 years from now. So that's what we're trying to educate them on how to be active in protecting your rights, your treaty rights, and also learn about the environment, you know, whatever it is, water, the dams, solar power, plastics. You know, like now a big thing is, you know, we've been working on too with our group is plastics. You know, like everyone likes plastic bottles, and also petroleum derived materials. And so we're trying to avoid, you know, using plastics and look at ways that we as a tribe or people can change, I guess you could say, our ecological footprint, because right now we're, you know, the way commercial industry is, you know, everyone wants things that are quick and convenient, you know, like I don't want to wait, I want this now, I want to be able to store it and things like that. And so it's kind of like what we're trying to do is change how people view things, and more also with the tribes, or really spiritual, you know, like when like my cousins and my family say, when you take an animal's life, you thank the creator for that, because an animal is sacrificing its life for you, for your subsistence. And to me, the way most tribal members view the taking of an animal or life is really sacred. It's because it's a part of us. It's a part of our life, our culture. And I think one thing that I know, one time there's a there's a dentist, not Indian woman dentist, and I was talking about the tribe. She knew nothing about the tribes or Indians' culture, et cetera, beliefs. And so she was asking me if our culture was a maternal culture or matriarchal. And I said, well, what do you mean matriarchal? Do you mean like matriarchal 100 years ago before the non-Indians, or do you mean now? And I think a lot of times people interpret, like say us taking an animal hunting, fishing, or gathering for the roosts that we eat, the first foods that we take, which is salmon, deer, elk, moose, all those are for our first foods. The ones that when we take them, it's not, to me, they equate things with the modern thing, like kind of like you're saying earlier about whether this, like I'm not vegan, you know, or, you know, people have ideas that they feel are correct for them. You know, that's just like with me, you know, a lot of people, I have friends that don't eat meat, that don't hunt, don't fish, don't gather. But to me, it's not just something like I'm doing as my thing, or because it's cool, or it's the latest, you know, thing to come out of academia, that I do it because this is, my mother did it, my grandfather did it, my great grandfather did it. And so I'm just I'm trying to carry on this tradition and protect salmon, the water, the forest, because all these life forms were here. And before the non-Indians, we were able to live fairly harmoniously within it. You know, we didn't have plastic. We didn't have all these things that modern society has given us now, that we have to figure out how do you dispose of them. And so that's one thing. And I know we may not get back to that point, but I know one thing is that we have to start doing something, because the earth is really suffering, and the issues of trying to change people's thinking is the big thing I found, because we've even had run-ins, not run-ins, but misunderstandings, I guess, with non-Indians, environmental groups. We work with some big environmental groups, and it's kind of like we had a treaty workshop to talk to the non-Indian NGOs or environmental groups about where we're coming from, I guess you'd say, because a lot of them, they talk about like, let's breach the dam so we can have, free flowing rivers, and we'll have a lot of recreational opportunities, whitewater rafting, rock climbing on the, it's like, I'm not into none of that. I could care less about whitewater. They have whitewater rafting up in Riggins, which to me gets back to the issue of exploitation of the land and the water, because it's just like, I'm a member of the Friends of the Clearwater, and they're ice fighting. I joined them a few years ago, and Elliot was on the board, Lucy was on the board, they're on our board now. And we joined them because they're protecting the wilderness and wilderness area, and that's in our treaty area. And those guys, they're really powerful. They're a small group, but they're, it's kind of like they're looking at how do you protect these? Just like with the wilderness and wilderness in Idaho, a lot of the locals, they love to go in there, cut the timber, trash out the creeks, ruin the riparian areas, kill all the elk, kill all the moose, because they want to, usually the state or other agencies, they want to make money off of it. Like, how much money can we make? Okay, there's 500 moose there in that Selway Locks area. We can sell tags for whatever, 500 a piece. We can get the licenses and we can make money. And so to me, even with the idea of why do you want to breach the dams is a big issue, because like I say, some people feel that it's kind of like, let's not commercialize it, the salmon or the fish hatchery fish, but then let's get rid of the dams and let's commercialize it anyway. We'll have recreational opportunities, and it's just, I was getting back to, it's like when we have people like, say, even with our tribe, I tried to ban ATVs, because they like fisheries program force, they like to ride ATVs out there. It's for a good cause, but I don't think they need to. They can walk. It's just like in the wilderness area, they restrict people using any automated vehicles. And the one group over there I met with, we had a meeting with, they banned rock climbing. I think it was in Montana, which is a good idea too, because to me, it doesn't matter what type of like higher plane that people think they're coming from, where what I do is okay, but what they do is not. And I think that's really, to me, what the issue is, because right now, it's just like the Simpson's plan. I was thinking, he's from Idaho, our tribe's in Idaho, I grew up in Idaho, and I kind of like the way he's thinking, this is what we want, and this is what we're pushing for. I'm not saying I live in Washington, but, I like the kind of idea that he had, like, this is what we want, and we'll try to work with you, but if we can't work it out, then, we'll get the decrease, and then, you guys can figure that stuff out, because I think that's one thing, like I said, where people want to have everyone feeling good about it. Yeah, you're going to get money, you're going to be able to do this and that. But to me, when it really comes down to it, the issue is the dams have to be breached, and that will, I believe, solve many problems. And another thing I know you mentioned earlier, we had one of our members, Gary Dorr, went back when I think Murray or Cantwell, like I said, I'm a Washington, I'm kind of a Democrat, and Murray and Cantwell proposed that in Critic, where my brother works, Columbia River Intertribal Fish Commission, they were really on board with this killing sea lions to save salmon. So we had a staff member, or not a staff member, he's a friend of mine. He went back and testified before the subcommittee on natural resources and said that we don't support that. Our group doesn't support that. We don't think it's right because it's ridiculous. And so now, this year, I think it happened a year or two ago. And so this year I asked my brother, I said, so NRDC, whoever, anyone I could ask. I said, okay, so can I see the ratio of sea lions that were killed or hazed or moved, and the number of salmon that were saved? No one can say that. No one can tell me, and I don't believe in killing sea lions. It's ridiculous. But anyway, it's those kind of stopgap measures they're always trying to put in, or the spills, we'll spill more water at the dam. That'll help the fish. It might help one run, but it's not a long-term program. And I think with Simpson, at least he's doing something. It's kind of like at the tribe. I told some people, I said, I presented plenty of resolutions and motions, and so no one else comes up with any ideas, but everyone wants to complain about the one person that's, we're working on other stuff too with grizzly bears over in Montana, because we want to support the and then grizzly bears. We want to support them, protect them, and work with other groups over there, Alliance for Wild Rockies and different. There's a bunch of groups. Then also the next time we're going to put up is Stop the Wolf Slaughter in Idaho, because what's ironic is the tribe and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, I can't remember how many years ago they reintroduced the wolves, and so and then I went up to this one place where they kept some wolves from a guy down in Boise or Sun Valley. He had some, so they kept them up at the tribes on some tribal land. They had a big ceremony, and then, drums, and we love the wolves, he's our brother and stuff. And then they delisted them, and then the tribe doesn't say nothing about it. Now the state, basically wants to kill all of them, or as many as they can, because the ranchers and the farmers don't like them, because they might eat their cows, or they might, whatever, who knows. And so that's another issue that we have to fight. And I grew up here, and I know, I know jobs are created by industry, and but things like that are really important to our group and to me personally, to make sure that we respect, and it comes down to respect Mother Nature, Mother Earth. Like the wolves have just as much right to be here as I do, or any other rancher that lives in Idaho, or the grizzly bears. And so it's kind of like people, when they get, like, people have their own interests, how they perceive it as threatened, like from the wolves or the grizzly bears or the buffalo over in Montana. They want to kill them. Let's just get rid of them. They're, they might cost me some sheep. They might cost me they might infect my cattle. That's what they say over in Montana, that those bison coming out of the Yellowstone by Gardner are infected with brucellosis, and they've never had a case of that. And, I don't even see, I've gone over there, I've never seen any cattle around there. So I can't figure out what they're talking about, but it's kind of like, if the majority of the people don't like an animal, they'll kill it and hunt it and get rid of it, and then the state will go along with them. Even in my state, Washington, Northeast Washington or Oregon, we have treaty rights. Our treaty goes to Oregon, Idaho, Washington, Montana. So we have treaty rights in those areas. So we try to look at those areas too. And in Northeast Oregon, there's a lot of issues with wolves too. And the big thing too there is the grazing on public land of ranchers. They like to graze their cattle up there. And so they don't want any wolf packs up there eating their cattle and things like that. So, but we have a pretty good wide range of issues that we're working on, because our treaty, like I said, it goes into those areas, and then even on the Columbia River. And so we work with, even other groups, like with the against the coal trains, oil trains coming from, Montana and North Dakota. And also we worked on I met with the Columbia River. We were pretty tight with Columbia River keepers. And we supported them and worked with them on that methane terminal at Vancouver and stuff like that. So we try to work with other tribes and other groups as much as we can, because we're all employed full-time. Elliot and I work full-time regular jobs too. So, but I guess that's kind of the gist of our organization. And what we're trying to do, we work with the kids a lot and try to get them interested, and, to learn how to be more active, because even I will say, when we started, a lot of things like Facebook, social media campaigns, I didn't know how to do any of that stuff. And, we had a lot of help from Earth Justice. They did the video for our canoe journey. It's online, YouTube, the canoe healing journey, it's called, by Earth Justice. And they helped us out a lot. Different groups, Save a Wild Salmon and Myers Trust. Countless tribes in Washington have supported us financially, and Group Health Foundation. And so we've been able to keep doing what we're doing. And one thing that I will say, Elliot and I always talk about, that we don't represent the tribe. We're tribal members. We don't speak on behalf of the Nez Perce people or the Nez Perce Nation or all Indians in the United States, that we just speak, from what we believe, him and I and Lucy. And, because we also have to make sure that the people, like one time this person, I think she was in that one group, I forget what it's called, but she asked me, what does the tribe think about this or that? And I said, I don't know, go ask them. I don't know. Because I think people in the United States, I think all the Indians speak the same language. They all think the same thing. And, it's kind of like, it's just like any other group, we have different thinkers. And one thing with I was happy about was our council chairman. We've been trying to push our own tribe. We had general council meetings or 2 annual meetings before the COVID where we all meet. There's like 300-400 people there, tribal members. We pushed the resolution for the NEPTIC to take Nez Perce Tribal Executive Committee. That's the council that we vote on, 9 of them. We asked or put a resolution to have them take action to breach the dams, take whatever legal action necessary to breach the dams, right away. And they were the chairman. I remember he didn't like that because the BPA guy was calling him up the next day because he saw it in the paper at the Trib, and he asked him what we were doing over here. And so, because the BPA, through hydroelectric power, they provide a lot of money. They give a lot of tribes money. Even the Salish Kootenai tribe, I think they give money. I couldn't have no idea how they're related to the Snake River salmon. They'd like to throw out that money, BPA, give it to us. We have the biggest fisheries program in the United States, I heard. They paid for a $13 million fish hatchery up here on Cherry Lane, on the Clearwater, they call it Cherry Lane, and things like that. And so we may not always agree with the tribe, but recently the chairman in public with Linda Mapes did an article in the Seattle Times and a video about how they now support dam breaching as the only way that the salmon runs are going to be restored. And I think with that, there's similarities to like Simpson's plan because, we say we want the dams breached, but we want that earthen part removed, or people will say, well, remove the whole dam. But I think the reason we push for these 4 is because they were designed to be breached. The breach is the earth. They have a half cement or concrete and then half earthen, so they can get rid of the earthen, and then that will allow the water to free flow. So that, the Columbia River dams are not breachable. They're not able to be breached because they're all concrete all the way across. So this is one issue up here. And I think realistically, it's like people, when they hear these things or they get these kind of short quips about something like Simpson's plan or the breaching of the dams or the salmon or the tribes, it's kind of like with around here in Idaho, there's very few blacks, or very few Mexican immigrants. And people will talk about, like, these local radio talk shows talk about, minorities or people of color. And, it's just like, I ask people, you could ask people right here, have you ever met a black person? Any black people? And they'll say no, because they haven't, but they have and it's just like with Indians, like, have you ever talked to an Indian about it? Have you ever asked me or any other tribal member, like, what this means to them? And I think and like I was saying, is when people have their viewpoint. It's just like with me when I went in the Navy, I met people all over the country, people from down south, Puerto Ricans from Florida, people from my good buds are black from New York City. And so you meet all these different people. And it's like when you meet them and talk to them individually, it's just like I say with the tribes, with Indians, is you get to know them and you understand them rather than just assuming things, like all the Indians, kind of like you're talking about, all like to eat meat. I don't believe in it. I respect animals. We have animals. I respect them, and I don't raise cattle or nothing like that. But with us and our subsistence, it's a part of us. It's a part of our culture. And it's like I say with before the non-Indians came here, we were doing this. We were doing this long before the non-Indians migrated out here, whatever we want to call it. And so it's not something that we take lightly about what we're doing. And like I said, we respect Mother Earth, we respect the fish, the salmon, we respect the elk and moose and deer that we use. And we respect the soil and the forest that we use, whatever we use it for roots or medicine that we traditionally have used. We respect it. We're not trying to exploit it. It's not to make money off it or to sell it. I don't believe in that either. It's just like, to me, being a tribal member is about teaching your children respect. Like, we respect this life that's out there. And I think that's what people need to view it as, how we, and I'm not speaking on behalf of any tribe, but how I view it, it's a spiritual thing. It's a connection we have where it's just like, say, a family member or someone, you wouldn't mistreat them, most normal situation, you wouldn't mistreat them, you want to respect them and take care of them. And that's what we're trying to do with particularly the salmon on the rivers, do what I can to protect them. And as far as the rest of it, whether people like my methods or how I live or things like that, I'm not worried about that, because I have this idea that, to me, is protecting those salmon and allowing them to live their lives just like I expect people to let me live my life. I want to be able to do that for them. And the salmon right now are just a big issue to us. There's other issues, with wildlife around the area and within our treaty area and within the wilderness and wilderness area. But this is something we're focusing on right now. So it's probably the big.
Yeah, thank you. You have raised so many important questions in such a short period of time. And I want to just tease out a few and maybe ask you to follow up on a couple of them because there's so much rich information in what you've said. So one of the themes that you've addressed is sort of knowledge, right? Knowing about other people helps us respect them more. And I think the same thing is true for animals, right? And so one of the reasons that we created World Aquatic Animal Day is because people don't have exposure to these animals. They don't understand them. They don't know what they need. And they don't know how they're interconnected with other animals and other parts of the environment. And so I think people are beginning to understand that the salmon issue is not even just the salmon issue as far as which humans get to take the animals, but as you alluded to, it's whether the sea lions and whether the birds and whether the other animals are going to eat their traditional food as well, and sometimes that's salmon, and whether even the grizzly bears, right, have enough salmon, and whether the orcas have enough salmon. And we know that the grizzly bears in some parts of the world, Alaska and other places, are suffering, and some on the lower 48 because they don't have enough salmon to eat, and the orcas are suffering because they don't have enough salmon. And so, yeah, seeing these connections, I think, are you finding that it's helpful to share that information with people so that they can understand even more why it's important to protect these animals?
Yeah, that's just like one connection we made a few years ago, and now we have pretty strong with the Lummi tribe and other people that work with the orcas over there. Giles is her name. She works with them a lot. We had a summit last year in January before the pandemic hit, and we had a bunch of people. They call it orca pods, where Deborah Ellers, she works with them a lot. So we made the connection probably 3 years ago about how the Chinook salmon, they feed primarily on Chinook that come up here, and so we made the link between the orcas or the killer whales and the effect that this is having on not just the salmon up here, but the orcas in the ocean and other, and that's what we're trying to make, even with other areas, of like the connection that, it's just like if you take a sea lion, okay, they're like we're over in Montana this week, and the elk and buffalo, the elk are out there eating, it looks like constantly. So that's what they're doing, that they're surviving. That's what their purpose is to, they have to eat to live. And so they're out there eating all these elk. And same with orcas. People might say, well, orcas eat Chinook. That's not right, or that's wrong. But that's just like with any person or human being or life. They've been doing that, and that's what they do. And now we have a pretty strong connection with a lot of the groups over there on the west side, we call it, in Eastern Washington, to show that this relationship is there. And it's just like any relationship, whether it's the water or the timber. Like, you can't cut all the trees and have all the dirt and mud slide down into the river, because that affects the spawning beds too, or goes into the river and things like that. So that's what we're trying to do too, is make sure that we focus on the connection that we have, not with just like, it's not just something up here. It affects the whole chain. There's a kind of a life chain that is being impacted, not just up here to where we have to make those connections, because you can't. I think there's one, I don't know if it's John Muir said something like, you can't remove one part without affecting the whole, which is happening right now. The Chinook are being impacted. The orcas are being impacted. So connections like that are really important for people to see. And I think if you have an open mind, most of the time you can read and hear about those connections. And so that's really one good thing that I think has come out of this. I've learned more about orcas, because I didn't even think about it before, but then I realized after reading and seeing things that I realized there's a connection between us, the Chinook up here, and the ocean. So.
Yeah, and I think that one of the other relationships that has been invisible for a lot of folks who live in the United States is the relationship with the native peoples and the protection of the environment. And so when we lose protection for the lifestyle, and we lose protection for the respect of nature that the native peoples have shown for centuries and centuries, then we lose, right? We lose that understanding, and we lose that protection. And so I think it's very interesting to me as a lawyer to see now the need to protect the treaty rights for the people who then will also protect the environment, and that helps the animals. And we also need, for the areas that are not protected by treaty rights, we need specific legal protections for those animals as well, because people don't understand all the things that you've been saying. They don't understand the connections. They don't understand the value, the non-commercial value that these animals have in themselves and in their relationships with other animals and other parts of the environment. Yeah.
Yeah, that was one thing, like we are talking earlier about like we passed at our general council, we passed, LA brought it up, and we passed the rights of rivers, rights of the Snake River, and it went to the council. And so the council now, because they're involved in a lot of litigation or any type of water rights, EPA, USV, Oregon, all these big cases. And so the chairman sent out a letter to saying that we're going to use that rights of rivers as in all our litigation and all documentation related to the salmon or the rivers, which is really cool. Because, and I was thinking, like, because Ellie and I have talked about this, other people, about like who has rights, like should only humans have rights? But we don't believe that, because right now, to me, like with the rights of rivers, or they have other aspects of rights of nature, protecting those. Like, how can you not have a right to survive or to flourish? And that's what I think is, just goes back to this. Like I told them, my sister my brother and sister went to law school too. My sister's an attorney up in Spokane, but she was our chief judge for a while. And it's kind of like with that it's English common law. It's not tribal traditional law. Like, how does a tribe view the right of a salmon or an animal in the wild to flourish and to survive? It's kind of like this, it's still this, to me, it's like the continuation of this whole kind of mainstream culture of who has rights, because they're taught that people have rights. It's in the Constitution, the constitutional right. But what about the rights for others? And at first, when I tell you the truth, when we work with Earth Law Institute, it does sound kind of like different, but then once we started talking to him, what's his name? Grant Wilson, he's the one that drafted our resolution for Earth Law Institute. And, then I realized, after Ellen and I were talking, that we realized more and more that these entities should have rights. The water should have rights. The land should have rights, the salmon, the animals should have rights, because right now they have no rights. It's just like they're a commodity, and we can do whatever we want to them, because whoever has the most money and who has the most power. I see this, even I work with some people I know that are in Vietnam. They're trying to dam up the Mekong Delta. I think they've stopped it, but things like that, to where the water has no rights. And if the government or a corporation thinks that this is what we need to do, we got enough money to do it, and we'll get rid of anyone who is in the way, that they feel that they can do that, which I don't believe in. I don't think might is right, or money should dictate what we do. And so that's what we're trying to, but it's a big battle, because it's like the hydroelectric dams, people, what are they really interested in? It's money. The money from the dam, money from barging, the money for irrigation, all this stuff, because they're all making money off of it. That's what I really don't like. It's kind of like, find a different way to make money. Don't make it off of something that doesn't have the right to determine, whether it can be used like that. So,
right. I think that and that's probably a really good place to end, in thinking about the commercialization of animals and of nature, and how problematic that is, and how so many people have grown up in that system that they don't even see it, that's what's happening. And so to have the conversation about, should nature have rights and should animals have rights, is a little odd, because it's just not how we think of things. We think of nature and animals only as having value for us. So whether that's selling them and making money, whether that's being able to go visit when we want to, or see animals in a cage, or whatever it is, they only matter because we say they matter. And so they only matter how we say they matter, rather than mattering for their own sake. And so, yeah, I think the work that you're doing is really wonderful, because it's helping open these conversations to people. And so, as you said, so some folks aren't going to be familiar with Congressman Simpson's plan to breach the dams, and so I would recommend people go review that. And so opening these conversations, I think, is what's really helpful in talking about how to make these connections, how to make them visible, and how to protect relationships, and see people and see the animals and the environment as having value. And that's, I think, a really wonderful aspect of the work you're doing. So I want to thank you for that. And thank you for taking time to talk with us today.
Sure. Thanks a lot. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you so much for attending this webinar, and a special thanks to Julian Matthews for his thoughts and contributions to this day. Recordings of this session, along with the others from World Aquatic Animal Day, will be available in coming weeks on the Center for Animal Law Studies YouTube channel. For information about that or about this day more generally, visit worldaquaticanimalday.org. We'll now have a brief break, and we'll see you back on this same link at 11 a.m. for Kasya Patel, Program Director at Oceanic Global, presenting Plastic Pollution and Marine Life: Opportunities for Action. Thank you.